So with that, let's dive into the formula for secure identity-based access. My name is Kaylee Carlson. I'm the Product Marketing Manager at Jamf, and I'm joined today by Kelsey Nelson, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Okta, and Paul Cleary, Ecosystem Architect at Venafi. Over the last several years, organizations have become more modern and even more so now during this unprecedented time. And because of that, they're asking the question, how can I better secure my devices and information with today's more mobile workforce? During those conversations, there have been a lot of questions about zero trust, and it's become a more widespread topic of interest. IT departments are thinking more and more about how identity-based access and device security fit into a zero trust model. So over the next 30 minutes, we'll be discussing the old way of security and how that presents challenges for today's more mobile workforce. We'll talk about what zero trust is and how it can be beneficial in solving these challenges. We'll also touch on how organizations can deliver improved security with the zero trust approach by focusing on the people within the organization with identity and access management. And then finally, we'll talk about how to improve device trust beyond just the user. So let's start off today by talking about the old way of security within organizations. We just mentioned that today's workforce is ever evolving and really looking to combine efficiency and effectiveness in their work. Employees are demanding that employers enable flexible work styles, but with the same user experience they would have if they were in an office. Apps are moving to the cloud, and more organizations than ever before are examining their remote and work from home policies, whether that is for health, it's for employee retention, or productivity reasons. Whatever the reason is, I think the days of a 9-to-5 workday exclusively from an office are coming to an end, as work is no longer confined by a place and by time. In fact, in a 2019 study published by Talent LMS, 66% of organizations allowed employees to work remote, and 16% of all employees worked remote full-time. And we know that these numbers have grown and will continue to grow as the working world is really forever changed. And alongside the workforce, technology is also advancing to connect people and give them access to everything they need from anywhere, from most any device. But this change in working environment and supporting end users also presents new challenges for IT admins to maintain security while providing that same user experience that employees have come to expect. All of these factors contribute to the breakdown in a traditional enterprise security perimeter, or as it's been called, the castle and moat approach, that many organizations have known for years. The castle and moat model refers to a trusted internal network, or the castle, that is protected by a perimeter, or the moat, and anything outside of that perimeter is considered untrusted. In addition to the changing workforce, we also know that security attacks are becoming more and more sophisticated, and untrusted entities are sometimes able to breach that perimeter or that outer layer of security. We also know that sometimes things happen within organizations where you have someone that is already deemed trusted and they decide to do something malicious and create a vulnerability within the system. It's these types of threats that have led to the need for a better security model. Essentially, you can no longer consider anyone or anything trusted. Everything must now be thought of as never trust, always verify, which is the foundation of zero trust. So what exactly is zero trust? Zero trust is not a new concept. It's been around for over a decade when it was first developed by Forrester researcher John Kindervag, in which he outlined a concept that throws away trusted internal networks and deems everything as being untrusted. His zero trust concept is based on the following core principles. So first, all resources must be accessed in a secure way from a secure machine, regardless of location. Today, more than ever before, connecting from a particular network should not determine what a user can and cannot access. We work from different places all of the time, and where you connect from should not determine what you can access and how you can work. Secondly, access control is on a need-to-know basis. So once you join a company, you have exactly what you should have access to. And when you leave, you no longer have access to that data and device. Today, a need-to-know basis is based on what we know about you and what we know about your device. So access is granted based on the answers to questions like, what group or department are you in, which is based on your cloud identity? What apps are you trying to use? What location and network are you logging in from? What device are you on? Is it a managed device and is it secure? Is it a device that we've never seen before? The answers to questions like these will determine what services you have access to or what level of authentication policies that you will get. And then finally, organizations must inspect and log all traffic to verify that users are doing the right things, the things that they should be doing, and nothing more than that. So over the decade since this initial concept was developed, it has been enhanced, it's been revamped to now be the Zero Trust Extended Ecosystem, or ZTK, where the central focus of security should be on the users. Putting an emphasis on the people aspect of security, the focus shifts to who accesses your system and the access controls they have with identity and access management being a critical component to the people part of the framework. This notion was turned into an achievable reality with advances to cloud identity coupled with device security and endpoint security solutions, serving as the foundation for modern and secure access controls. Unfortunately, these security requirements generally mean a heavy burden on employees, forcing them to jump through a series of hoops to simply access the resources that they need to get their work done. All too often, they have multiple accounts, disparate applications, and far too many usernames and passwords to juggle at any given time. So we talked a bit ago about how employees are demanding that same user experience they would have if they were in an office, and we know organizations are keeping security plus a seamless user experience top of mind. So we'll touch on how, with Jamf Connect and with Okta, we can ensure a high level of user trust by unifying identity across apps and devices in just a few minutes. But first, let's dig more into identity-based security and how it's crucial to leading organizations to zero trust success. So I'm going to turn it over to my counterpart, Kelsey at Okta, to talk about delivering improved security with identity.
All right, thanks, Kaylee, and thanks so much again for having me on today. This is Kelsey Nelson from the Okta team, and we're next going to jump into delivering improved security with identity and the role of identity in your zero trust strategy. So, as you know, we've talked about a lot, and what we hear a lot of questions on zero trust and how do we start to tackle this and unpack this within a business. And I think when we start to take a look at what does that mean, and how do we start to modernize our infrastructure, we can start to distill the challenge of zero trust into solving this problem, which is that we need to ensure the right people have the right level of access to the right resources in the right context, and that we assess it continuously. And of course, we need to make sure to do so with the least amount of friction possible. So that way we're making it both more secure and also usable for our end users, because we know if we don't, they have a tendency to circumvent our security controls. So we want to keep that balance in mind. And in the way that we approach that comes in a few different functional ways. So we start to break that down. Certainly it looks like unifying identity across a variety of apps and devices, certainly using something like SSO as that unifying layer to deliver secure access. We also want to make sure, though, that we're securing that authentication process by enforcing risk-based authentication. So we'll talk a little bit more in a moment about what that means and the types of risk signals that we can bring in to better evaluate the riskiness of any particular authentication attempt. Now, that's probably when you're thinking of identity-driven security, that SSO eliminating passwords, unifying access, and then also layering on strong risk-based authentication as the primary components. But I do want to also talk a little bit about, too, that's including also provisioning and deprovisioning. So we want to make sure that if we're talking about ensuring the right people have just the access to the things that they need and no more, that we're able to do so in an automated way. The reality is that for many businesses, when we talk about provisioning and deprovisioning, so giving a user access to an account when they join, if they move roles, or if they leave, with deprovisioning access, that tends to be a manual process for many businesses. And so being able to automate that process certainly is going to drive a productivity benefit, but it's also going to help reduce what is potentially an error-prone process and really ensure that just the people that need access to that resource are provisioned an account. And then lastly, we of course want to make sure that we're enabling visibility and analytics across this entire ecosystem. So as users are getting access to different tools, as they're utilizing access, or if we see something amiss when we bring in that context or that risk-based authentication, that we're able to drive that visibility, enhance those analytics, and ideally be able to take action on them if we do see something is amiss. So I talked a little bit about these, but again, so we're talking about unifying identity across all apps and devices with something like SSO. I do want to reinforce here too, it's across all apps and devices. So making sure that that's inclusive of certain your cloud applications, but also those on-prem resources as well. We also want to make sure, again, that that authentication process is enforced through risk-based authentication. So bringing in those contextual signals, certainly from your device, from what do we know about the user, where are they authenticating from, is this a new location? And then also leveraging a variety of different factor types depending on the policy, but also the risk of that organization. So if you want to use, there's certainly some factor types that are easier and more manageable for users. So think of things like SMS and security question, which have historically been a lot of our go-tos when it comes to factors, but also starting to incorporate some of those higher assurance factors, things like WebAuthn or a physical security token, particularly in those riskier scenarios or for a resource that I want to have extra security. Now, when we talk about the contextual access management, I hinted at this a bit, but we really want to bring in a variety of risk signals from across your security stack. So certainly understanding what type of resource are they trying to access. Is this an especially sensitive resource? Is it a developer working on something for my business? Is this something that maybe isn't as high risk within the business? The user group that the user is coming from, what do I know about that person? Are they a developer? Are they an executive? Are they within the marketing team? What do I know about that user, and how might that adjust how I set policy? Certainly things like network, historically, I think we've done a lot with network in terms of understanding if the user is authenticating from the corporate network, but also being able to bring in more insights. Or do we want to block certain network types? Something like a Tor browser, we just want to universally block for our business. Device, of course, working with folks like Jamf, what kind of insight can we get into the device? Is this a corporate-owned device? Are they trying to authenticate from a personal mobile device? What do I know here? And then finally, location, which I think we're feeling a lot more heavily these days in this remote distributed workforce. But that idea is this user authenticating from a typical place that we see for them? Or, that impossible travel situation. Did they try to sign in from San Francisco in the morning and then Australia in the afternoon? Probably was not the same user, or at least begs us taking a further look. So finally here, that need to know, I talked a little bit about the automated provisioning and deprovisioning, so I won't belabor that point, but again, just being able to automate something that has historically been a manual and unfortunately often error-prone process. And again, that visibility and analytics across all of these systems. So we've broken this down into a sort of 4-stage maturity curve and what we've seen from organizations and how they tend to adopt this within their business. So stage 0 being early on in this journey, they might have an on-prem directory, they may be just starting to adopt cloud resources. Then as we move into stage 1, really wrapping our arms around that entire ecosystem. So something like implementing that SSO across, certainly again, we mentioned all of those resource types, but also all of the users that may require access, and not just your employees, but your contractors and your partners as well. And starting to layer on that strong multi-factor authentication. As we move into that stage 2 and stage 3, this is really where we start to build in that rich context-based access policy. So bringing in context, bringing in multiple factors, and really automating a lot of that work on the back end. And that top stage here, stage 3 of the adaptive workforce, is really where we start to take a holistic picture of risk. So combining a lot of those elements of context-based access policies with external signals. And in doing so, because we have a really good understanding of risk before we allow access to something, we can also then deliver frictionless or ideally a passwordless access in those lower risk scenarios. So this slide is a bit of an eyesore, I know, but this is just a look at kind of how I talked about that context and how a lot of these different partnerships fit together within that identity-driven security. So again, it really starts here with the user and the device as the foundation. As you move to the right, we kind of bring in that context from the bottom. So the blue being from within the identity provider, all those different pieces of context we just talked through, but also bringing in third-party signals. So something like what else do we know about the user or the device, Jamf being a key partner for us here. And combining those signals, moving up to the right here to the access, understanding and setting a risk score and allowing organizations to set policy based on that understanding of risk to authorize access into a wide variety of resources. So it could again be on-prem, it could be cloud, it could even be infrastructure, APIs, etc. And lastly, again, we talked about that visibility in analytics. So if we do see something as amiss, we want to make sure we're able to take a look and start to take action on it. And I think some of our partners in here are really where we see organizations starting to feed in those SIMs and those SOARs. So with that, I will turn it over to our next teammate.
Thanks, Kelsey. In this section, I want to talk a bit about how we can think about extending trust beyond the user. We heard earlier in the presentation that when thinking about contextual access management, that the device the user attempts to authenticate from is considered. Does this device have a valid certificate? Is this the first time that the user has attempted to authenticate from this device? If so, does it make sense to provide another factor of authentication before granting that access? And it's that first question that I like to explore a little further. Does this device have a valid certificate or machine identity? First, though, I'd like to take a minute to provide a bit of background and perhaps answer that question that you might be thinking, what is a machine identity? Machine identities are critical to security and availability, but tend to be underprotected in most organizations. To understand why, let's take a look at the two kinds of actors on every network, people and machines. People rely on usernames and passwords to identify themselves and to gain access to machines, applications, and devices. But machines don't. Instead, they use machine identities to authenticate and secure communication between other machines. Organizations spend about $10 billion every year protecting human identities, but they're only now, over the past few years, starting to think about protecting machine identities at the same level of security. And this presents a fundamental security gap because the bad guys are realizing this as well, and so they spend more of their time and resources trying to get access to compromised machine identities. In any complete identity and access management program, it's important to secure and protect the identities of both people and machines. But again, what exactly is a machine identity? Machine identities are things like SSL and TLS certificates, which can take the information that you provide to the browser and encrypt it for transport to your bank's website, for example. Another one is SSH keys, which are used when one machine needs to interact with another to transfer files, batch process, or perform other usually automated tasks. Code signing certificates, which validate authenticity and prevent tampering of executable code so that users can trust the software that they install and use every day. And finally, we have mobile and device certificates that can help to answer that contextual question from earlier. They can help to prove that the device the user is attempting to authenticate from is actually a legitimate device. And we heard earlier that identity and access management are at the core of zero trust. And we're seeing organizations start to understand that machine identity management really should be a part of their broader identity and access management operations and security processes. In true zero trust environments, Each machine needs to have its own unique identity as well, and there must be a system of record in place that can be referenced on demand to validate that machine's identity. Is the certificate being presented a known certificate? Has it been issued according to policy set by the InfoSec or PKI operations team? Is the certificate still valid? And if so, for how long? What is the process to ensure that certificate is renewed and provisioned before it expires and affects a business process? A recent Gartner report indicated that organizations with more than 200 certificates need to invest in automation to protect themselves. But over half of enterprises manually track keys and certificates, and another quarter use homegrown solutions. These methods don't support the volume and velocity needed to keep pace with the explosive growth of machines, nor do they scale or provide the automation and remediation needed to quickly find and replace a compromised machine identity. For effective machine identity management, organizations really need three main capabilities: visibility, intelligence, and automation. You start with visibility into all your machine identities across your hybrid IT enterprise. With this visibility, you get awareness of the current state of your keys and certificates and enable a centralized inventory. With intelligence about those machine identities, you can start to set consistent security policies across your business and also customize by use case when needed. Detailed intelligence on machine identity attributes allows for policy enforcement, workflow management, comprehensive reporting, and meaningful analytics. Automation is critical and should be built into your key and certificate provisioning and lifecycle processes. When integration with your broader IT ecosystem is based on automation, you make machine identity management a part of your broader identity and access management operation and security processes. Again, I just want to really quickly reiterate that device security is a critical layer in a zero trust architecture. If you're using mobile device management or MDM solution, you can take advantage of native Apple security features such as enforcing encryption and passcodes, running policies to turn on File Vault, restricting malicious software, and patching all of your Apple devices are all great ways to secure devices with a centralized place for admins to not only monitor those devices, but also push remote security commands and take immediate action if a security incident were to occur. And now I'll pass it back to Kaylee to discuss how organizations can start to implement a zero trust model.
Thanks, Paul. So today we've talked about why zero trust is important, the core principles of zero trust and how it's evolved, and we've discussed identity-based access as the focus of zero trust, and also the importance of device security alongside users. Between device security and MDM, access and identity management, cloud identity, and endpoint management, you have a lot of different aspects of zero trust to think about. So let's talk about a few solutions that can help you begin your journey to implementing and achieving a zero trust model. For those of you that might be new to Jamf, here's a quick summary of what we do. Jamf helps organizations succeed with Apple, and that's why you're here, to help your organization succeed. Just as zero trust components put people at the focal point, organizations must consider their users' experience almost as much as the security itself. The priorities are no longer security first and user experience second, but more as a 1A and 1B approach. Jamf, Okta, and Venafi can help put both security and a great user experience at the top of the priority list for organizations. With Okta Identity Cloud and Jamf Connect, organizations can ensure a high level of user trust by unifying identity across apps and devices through seamless single sign-on. The integration of these two solutions provides the benefits of provisioning and authentication out of the box. So we talked about how provisioning is an important step to ensuring users have access to exactly what they need and should have access to, and nothing more. Jamf Connect allows admins to pre-provision devices and create just-in-time local Mac accounts with a user's cloud identity credentials, ensuring that a single cloud identity to access everything needed for a user to be productive. Jamf Connect with Okta also enables multi-factor authentication at both the Mac account level and for applications when needed. Keeping cloud-based credentials in sync. So we know that passwords pose a security threat, which is why Jamf Connect keeps cloud-based credentials in sync across the device and applications, which also provides a better end-user experience by reducing the number of credential-related support tickets for IT and keeping users productive. And finally, passwordless access to business-critical applications. So users will be able to access everything they need once they have authenticated, eliminating the number of times that they must enter credentials to each and every application or service. Utilizing SSO wherever possible also helps eliminate security risks for multiple passwords while providing a great end-user experience. This duo of Jamf Connect and Okta also provides a bird's eye view into all users and the access they have. So it makes it easy for admins to know who's accessing their machines, from where, and when, so they can always monitor and then act if any suspicious activities occur. So Jamf Connect is MDM agnostic, so it pairs with most mobile device management solutions, but when combined with Jamf Pro and with Okta, IT has the ability to prevent an unmanaged, untrustworthy Mac or user from accessing corporate apps and important information. Okta's capabilities allow admins to require users to leverage only known and secure devices to access an organization's most important asset, which is, of course, its data. These three combined, Connect, Pro, and Okta, means users log in, they have their credentials verified, and they can gain seamless, secure access in the form of a triple-layered security fortress, wherever they happen to be set up to work. Using an identity provider like Okta means you can centrally and remotely manage users, groups, passwords, and access to resources in a secure manner within the cloud, along with leveraging the provisioning and multi-factor authentication that Jamf Connect provides. So if we're taking this one step further, Venafi now integrates with Jamf Pro. So Venafi's trust protection platform turns management of TLS-based trust certificates, which act as machine identities, into a streamlined, simple process with Jamf Pro. With this integration, a multitude of certificates can be automatically issued or revoked for thousands of devices. Configuration profiles and flexible scoping allowed stored certificate configurations to be applied for specific groups of alike devices. At the same time, Venafi's platform allows for special custom policies to be managed as well, enabling flexibility for unique certificate use cases. This allows either corporate-owned or BYOD devices to all share the same security baseline level of trust before they're granted access to critical Wi-Fi, VPN, or any other organizational resources. This brings high-speed, high-scale identity security to your machines and devices, completing that full circle of zero trust efforts. And then on top of all of this, Jamf Protect is developed exclusively for macOS, providing a complete solution to maintain endpoint compliance, monitor for, respond to, and remediate security incidents on macOS with minimal impact to the device and end-user experience. So as we close today, whatever your zero trust journey looks like and wherever you are in that process, we would like to help. Whether you have employees that are in the office or they are working remote, we can help with identity and device security so that your users have everything they need when they need it, and IT has that confidence that there's a high level of security regardless of where a user accesses resources from. So you can give your users that flexibility they're looking for while you know your data, users' identity, and devices are secure. To learn more about any of these products, please visit us at our websites, jamf.com, okta.com, or venafi.com.